The moment my phone vibrated on the kitchen counter, my life split cleanly in two, like a fault line opening under my feet without warning, because the message I had sent a few seconds earlier was never meant for her, never meant for the woman who signed my paychecks and trusted me with deadlines and responsibilities, never meant for my boss whose name sat at the top of every email like a reminder of the distance between our worlds, and yet there it was, glowing on my screen, impossible to pull back, impossible to pretend it hadn't happened, a careless flick of the thumb that turned a private thought into a public confession and made my heart pound so loudly I was sure the neighbors could hear it. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness waves, in second chances, and in stories where one mistake becomes the beginning of something meaningful, take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this live and breathe through people who believe hearts can change and lives can turn around when we least expect it. My name is Daniel Walker, a quiet project coordinator in a mid-sized marketing firm outside Denver, the kind of man who blends into office hallways and speaks carefully in meetings, a Christian raised on Sunday sermons about integrity and humility, and someone who had spent most of his adult life believing that keeping your head down was the safest way to survive. My boss, Rebecca Collins, was everything I wasn't: confident without arrogance, kind without softness, respected by everyone from interns to executives, and admired from a distance I never planned to cross. My feelings for her were something I carried silently, like a folded letter I never intended to mail, written only to remind myself that I could still feel deeply even if I never acted on it. That night, exhausted from overtime and loneliness pressing against me like cold glass, I had typed a message meant for a dating app conversation, a rare moment of courage where I tried to sound warmer than I usually allowed myself to be, and without noticing, I sent it to the wrong contact, to the one person who should never have received it. The seconds after were a blur of panic and regret, my fingers hovering uselessly as if I could physically pull the words back into my chest. I paced my small apartment, the walls decorated with thrift store frames and family photos, my mother's smile frozen in time, my father's eyes steady and kind. I prayed without words, just a tight knot of pleading in my chest, asking God to undo what I had done, to turn back time or at least soften whatever consequences were coming. When the reply arrived, it wasn't anger or confusion or the professional distance I expected. It was something that made my knees weak and my thoughts spiral, a message that said she was coming over, that she wanted to talk in person, that there was no point pretending nothing had happened. The wait before she arrived felt longer than any night I could remember. I cleaned my apartment like my soul depended on it, wiping counters that were already clean, straightening books I never read, changing my shirt twice because neither felt right. I thought about my job, my reputation, the thin line between admiration and impropriety, and how easily one misstep could erase years of quiet effort. I thought about Rebecca as a leader, as a person, and how deeply I respected her beyond any personal feelings. When the knock finally came, it echoed through the room like a verdict, and I opened the door feeling smaller than I ever had. Seeing her standing there, not as a boss behind a desk but as a woman in a simple coat with tired eyes, shifted something in the air. The conversation that followed was not dramatic in volume but heavy in meaning, filled with pauses and honesty, with her explaining that she wasn't angry but concerned, that she valued professionalism but also believed people were more than their mistakes. I admitted everything without excuses, the loneliness, the admiration that grew quietly, the embarrassment that burned through me now. I expected disappointment, perhaps a firm boundary that would send her away and leave me to pick up the pieces alone. Instead, what unfolded was something gentler and more challenging, a conversation about respect, vulnerability, and the courage it takes to be honest even when it costs you comfort. Over the weeks that followed, life didn't magically turn romantic or easy. Rebecca and I agreed to strict boundaries at work, transparency with HR, and a pause on anything that could blur lines. It was humbling, walking into the office knowing people sensed a shift even if they didn't know the details, learning to rebuild trust not through grand gestures but through consistency. Yet something else began to grow in that space of accountability, a deeper respect for each other as human beings, not titles. Outside of work, through approved channels and careful steps, we continued talking, not rushing, letting friendship form a foundation stronger than infatuation. At the same time, I was forced to confront parts of myself I had ignored for years, the fear of being seen, the habit of shrinking back instead of stepping forward with honesty. I returned to church with new intention, not just sitting in pews but listening, letting the message of grace sink in, understanding that forgiveness isn't about erasing consequences but about learning from them. I volunteered more, spent time with friends I had pushed away, and slowly rebuilt a sense of worth that wasn't tied to anyone else's approval. Rebecca, too, changed in ways I hadn't expected. She shared stories of the pressure she carried as a leader, the loneliness that came with authority, the careful balance she maintained every day. We learned each other's rhythms, the way trust grows not through intensity but through patience. Months passed, seasons shifted, and what began as a terrifying mistake transformed into a catalyst for growth neither of us had planned. When the company eventually restructured and she moved to a different division, the professional barrier that once defined us softened naturally, allowing space for something honest to emerge without secrecy or guilt. By the time we finally acknowledged what had been quietly building, it wasn't about the flirty text or the shocking night it all began. It was about two people who faced an uncomfortable truth and chose integrity over impulse, growth over fear. Standing together at a community event, sunlight warming our faces, I felt a gratitude so deep it brought tears to my eyes, not because everything turned out perfectly, but because it turned out truthfully. My life was no longer defined by that accidental message, but by the choices I made after it, the humility I learned, and the courage to believe that even our worst moments can become doorways to better ones. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that mistakes don't have to be the end of your story, please take a moment now to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the channel, because your support helps keep stories of hope alive for others who are still waiting for their turning point. And before the ending, I have a special request for you. Please comment below with a single word that represents what this story made you feel, whether it's hope, grace, courage, or faith, because your words might be exactly what someone else scrolling through needs to read today. As I look back now, I no longer wish I could erase that night. I see it as a reminder that life is fragile and beautiful, that intention matters, and that love, when guided by respect and patience, can grow in the most unexpected soil. Sometimes the message we send by accident is the one that finally forces us to live on purpose, and if you're holding a mistake right now, wondering if it has ruined everything, remember this: it might just be the beginning of the most honest chapter of your life.